Good morning. Today is Thursday, May 23rd, 2024. We're in our lesson now 85. We have completed the first volume of Tanya, our mini video series. Each one is 10-15 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit less. And we're now going to a second volume. Second volume is much thinner. The first was 53 lessons. This is only 12. And this volume is called Gateway to Unity and Faith. The first volume was basically gradually building up the case for methods to connect closer to God, to connect closer to our fellow human beings, to repair relationship in between family, to help our health, to help our well-being, to become more clear in our minds about what the purpose of our existence, why we're here. Sometimes we can get frustrated with, I get frustrated, I'm sure other people too. I hear it from my friends that we made mistakes in our lives, so missteps. How do I correct it now? Was it the right decision, big decision I made? Was it right? Wasn't right? There's also ways to have it straightened out, even though sometimes it feels like, no, it's a dream. Or Tanya says, Torah says, it's never, you never lose faith in Hashem, you know, faith in the meaning that God leads us every way. So, in a second volume, now, Tanya is no longer talking details, who is a tzaddik, who is a rasha, bad person, good person, in between us. Now, Tanya, having discussed the anatomy and physiology of the soul, anatomy and physiology or connection to God, how to elevate your soul, how to bring the light down to this world, to illuminate the darkness. Now Tanya is talking about basically philosophical concept of what is God? What is God? How is a traditional Judaism versus Hasidic Judaism, rabbinical Judaism, Torah Judaism, different branches and philosophical and cultural differences existed and evolved. So it goes through the list, basically, when you think about it. In the Middle Ages, Rashi was born in 1040, died 1105. After him was Rambam, then was Ramban, then was Moses de Leon. This is now the Kaballah. He found the book of Zohar, so it's claimed. Some people claim that he wrote it. In between, so in other words, from 11th to 13th century, roughly 1,000 years ago, there was a lot of the Achronoim, a lot of the current commentators on Talmud, on Torah, live and functioned in France, then in Northern Africa, in Spain. Within the same time, Kabbalists also, Azriel of Gerona in 12th century and Asher ben David also around the same time. They were roughly contemporaries, plus or minus 50, 100 years. And they discussed the interaction, in a previous volume, the whole concept of Tanya, that unity of God, non-duality, that we are God, meaning we are part of God. We're expression. The universe, the physical world, is just an expression of several worlds or several conceptual Atzilut, from Ein Sof, Atzilot, Beria, Yetzira, Asiya, and us, and the 10 Sfirot. Are they actual attributes of God, or they're part of God? And that's all the debate between Kabbalists and non-Kabbalists, and within Kabbalists were. So, Baal Shem Tov, when Hasidim started, Baal Shem Tov, he was born in 1698, so the end of 17th, the early 18th century, started to develop the Hasidus, where the Tanya from Rabbi Shneur Zalman Liadi, who is a third step from Baal Shem Tov, essentially disciple of Maggid of Medrich, who is disciple of Baal Shem Tov, started to evolve. But before it got to him, maybe 400 or 500 years before that, there was debate that how is exactly, if we think about development of humanity, of humankind, whether you are evolutionists, so the world existed billions of years, or it was created in 6,000 years. Kaballah oftentimes reconciles that. Kaballah actually teaches that there was 7 millenniums, and we are now in the 7th. The first 7,000 years worked through this, were replaced by a second set of 7,000 years, and then the third one. Now we're in the 7th. And upon completion of that, that's the 6th ones. Then the 7th will be entering, after 200 some years, will become Messianic times. That's a Kabbalistic concept. And also, some of the Kabbalistic views could be that maybe not always, you can take it literally, the man was created and everything started. It could be evolution. God created something, and that something evolved. And eventually, chimpanzees and monkeys, Darwin might be right about that. And then eventually humans developed, you can also call the process that God breathes the life, and he gave intellect, more than just impulsive thinking, self-preservation thinking, and then animals have. So in any case, that evolution of thought always existed with human beings. We always were. The caveman was afraid of lightning and thunder, and then as the situation works itself further through technology, we always wanted to understand who are we and who is directing us, who is above us. That's essentially how religions get invented. Well, in Judaism, we are not saying that religion was invented. We're saying God, Hashem, brought the world into existence in a certain method, and we even within the classical theories, we would say everything fits together. So now we are thinking that we're talking about that whether you are you follow this particular branch of Judaism or that, or even if you are not religious, still the fundamentals of our good and bad, right and wrong, is the integral part of the society, integral part of humanity. So Maimonides, Rambam, Maimonides in 12th century, he basically, the Jewish philosopher, he basically believed that not like a prior, pre-Abrahamic, pre-earlier development of humanity that started to think that God is, this is God and this is us. And God created a universe like Greek philosophy and pagan philosophy, that not that God doesn't exist, God or gods, but we're basically pawns, like Greeks' mythology, that Venus and Jupiter, they're playing chess with us, and we're basically reflecting their palace intrigues, so to speak. But it's also part of believing there's something more than us, than the Greek mythology. Humans, half humans, mixed between the angel and the human and God and semi-God. All that essentially also the human desire to think about something more than just the physical, something the spiritual. Well, Judaism, of course, believes in its monotheism, and within monotheism also initial models of universe where God created and spun it into existence, and we just function on our own. It's just now the roll of the dice. And God exists, but He is doing other things. We're on this universe just doing left to the chance. Well, that's not a classical Judaism, but it's part of the beliefs that humans have. Another way, Maimonides says, God created the universe. He's involved with every step of the way. He's aware of what we're doing right now. But basically, it was Him and creation. So He created the universe. Now, from what? He created something from nothing. Nobody can actually understand how can He create something from nothing, but that's the postulate. And then when it's created, God continues His involvement with it. He created it. He had control over nothing. He has control over something about us. And yet, it is Him and creation. It is separation. Well, Kabbalists don't believe in that. Kabbalists believe that that it is, we are all uniform. There's no separation between God and universe. But yet, even within them, the Rabbi Azriel of Gerona believed that, disagree with Maimonides. He said, listen, there's no separation. How can you say that there's separation. And furthermore, even within Kabbalists, he said it's not just a figure of speech, it's not just expression of God's powers, the 10 Sfirot, Chokhmah, Bina, Dat, and so forth, Malchut. It's actually, they exist. God has these attributes. Well, that's what his belief. Classical, I guess, uniform, the discrete functionalities of God. But Asher ben David, the Kabbalist, he operated during the same period as Rabbi Azriel. He basically said, from the God standpoint, it's all one. From our standpoint, from our view, it looks like as a different features, that Chokhmah is distinct from Bina, distinct from Dat, distinct from Netzach, Chod, and all that. From our standpoint, we see it, but from God's standpoint, it's all one. Well, it's also difficult in our mind to perceive that. But that's just, and then, of course, Asher ben David saying, therefore, every intelligent person ought to understand and know the description of each attribute, Sfirot, is to calm the listening ear. And it is impossible for him to contain any limited or defined attribute. So in other words, God just made it so that we can relate to it from our physical, from our limited abilities to understand. But from God's standpoint, it's all one. The Tanya follows the non-Maimonian, past, combination of two. Tanya basically said that description of the theology as presented by the Kabbalists, the 12th century Kabbalists, can be even further enhanced, and that is Tanya brings in that concept that we discussed in Volume 1, that it's all one, talks about how to elevate your soul up, how to bring the divine light. That's more refined Baal Shem Tov's contribution to the evolution of religious philosophy, if you will. Now, by the way, Rabbi Nachmanides, Ramban disagrees with Rambam. So Rambam versus Ramban, two distinct. Rambam is more rationalist. Rambam was a doctor. He was a personal physician to the Egyptian king, and he had very rational approach to everything. Is just figure of speech. There's no like giants walking around. The Talmud describes it. It's just a figure of speech to describe some process and some idea. Ramban takes things more literally. Ramban is more Kabbalistic in that. Rambam is more in the Kabbalistic camp versus Rambam. All of these famous rabbis and famous sages were well-rounded individuals and understood and related to the entire spectrum, but they tend to bias some depending on their personalities and their upbringing, their teachers, to one way, to one scheme, to mechanism of the existent universe or the other one. So the Tanya then describes the view of God which dominated pre-modern and early modern thought was theism. Not atheism, but theism. They see God as a perfect being, existent, internal, changeless, almighty, all-knowing, supremely good, and who is the creator of everything distinct from himself. The salient point here is that God is absolutely separate from this world. And we discussed that. Then the popular trend among the subsequent modern thinkers was to reject theism in favor of pantheism, the view that God is identical with the earth. So it's nature. Basically, you guys know people or yourself perhaps feel on nature. I mean, we believe in something more than us. It's nature. And yes, nature can influence things, and we can affect the nature by some inner spiritual abilities. You can, and psychologists know if you want something, people in a distress can bend metal rods. So, powers are extremely strong, contained, and in times of stress, and in times of need, these powers do come out. So some people say, I'm atheist, I'm agnostic, I don't believe in God the way you do, like God sits on a cloud and pulls strings on earth, or even the Talmudic rabbinical description of God. But I feel it's something more than me. I want to be a good person because I live in nature. I need to be nice to people, yes. I know good from bad. I don't want to pollute the earth. When I eat ice cream, I don't take the wrapper and just throw it on the ground. I care for other people. So you can see the unity between religious, so-called non-religious, observant, non-observant people. It's just a matter of degree, just a matter of perception. But fundamentally, we all have that kernel of respect of something more than us, to greater or to lesser degree. Then, of course, Hasidic pantheism, not theism, pantheism, and then pantheism. That combines God, that it's, on one hand, it's there, and we're here, and yet it is all one. One is not separate from the other. And that is what entire first book of Tanya was going through, and now the second book of Tanya, in the introductions, in the acknowledgments, actually went through. So that's interesting. It's interesting that we finished the first book with this chart. It's a little bit confusing. I just flash it in front. You can see it in recordings of the previous book. This is our structure, anatomy and physiology of the world of God. And this is the anatomy and physiology of a human soul. And then there's the parallels Tanya brings. How God made man in his image. And Tanya goes through a three-step process, the pre-thought, thought, speech, and action. How that is. What is God's speech? And how is it parallel to the human speech? What is God thought? What the person thought? What's God's action? What's our actions? So to have this parallel between creations, you have to take a position that the attributes, there exist, that God has attributes. Now, if within the Kabbalists, or it's just metaphorical, it's just expressions of God. So in other words, when we talk about Hesed and Gevura, mercy and strength, one Kabbalistic camp would say, this is just, we see sometimes that I did something not so nice, and yet I repented, I did teshuvah, and God was nice to me, God was merciful to me. That's just expression of God. God, in this instance, acted to me this way because that's what Hesed needed. And sometimes, you're grounded for 3 days. You're not riding your bicycle. You're not taking candies because you did something wrong. The parent takes the child. It's a little bit of a punishment. That's Gevura. God is using this attribute. It's just expression of His will. But it's not He physically has these attributes. But the other camp says, no, that's physically. God has attribute and has an attribute of Gevura and the Tiferet and Netzach and Hod and Yesod and Malchut and all this physical, metaphysical, spiritual, but still distinct entities that combine. God uses one versus another one depending on situations. Well, when you think about it rationally, in light of this view of the history, you can say, well, what difference does it make? How it makes my life different? I know, basically, without going through philosophy, how many devils dance on the top of the needle, something like that. I think it's a Catholic debate. How many, 40 devils or 43 or 37 or 50? Doesn't matter. If somebody is having 100 blessings, it doesn't matter. It's 100, 110 or 117 or 93. It becomes a little bit exercise in futility. Many people, not all, some people say it's very important to know exactly this detail, but if you know that God is one, but it has 10 distinct attributes, or God does not have, but God physically is combined with these 10 attributes, they're combined together, but yet they're not physical, you can touch one or the other, but it becomes very philosophical debate, ultimately leading to the stalemate. Yet for Kabbalists, for two major camps of Kabbalah understanding that it was important, and they spend hours and days and lifetimes sitting and thinking about that. The important thing in our lectures here is to be careful not to spend too much time on that in a forest, on a beachfront, sitting and praying and thinking, is it really, is a Hesed, is a distinct feature of God, or is it just the way God expresses himself occasionally? Well, get up after your thoughts, after sitting there for 3 hours thinking about it, and have the neighbor bring a cup of soup, chicken soup, to the neighbor who is not feeling good, or involve yourself in the soup kitchens, or join the army, or get a job. And if you're a rabbi, teach people. And if you're a bus driver, drive the bus. If you're a doctor, apply your medical knowledge to help people. So do something in this world and combine your activities with going to synagogue, learning Torah, as you're doing right now. Have the roundabout life. And in the end of the day, ultimately, that's a flush out. It's in action that the Torah expresses itself through what we do, not just what we learn. Not that Talmud calls it the empty suits, empty bags, empty suits. That sometimes we see people filled with knowledge, walking around with the knowledge of Torah, knowledge of Talmud. They can quote every paragraph, and yet, somebody has a difficulty in their family, and they come to the rabbi and say, "What do we do?" And the rabbi says, "It's all in the hands of God. Just figure it out." That's Chatz v'Chalila, not to have a lashon hara, not to be critical, but just an example. If our life will be devoid from being involved, then we're in the wrong path. The Tanya says that the Rabbi Miller, who is writer of this book, stating that the purpose of Judaism not to remove yourself from this world, to feel spiritual uplifting. Oh, how greatly I'm involved in Torah, how close I feel, I'm Hashem, I'm so blessed. Not to go to the mountains and become a recluse and to feel great connection to God, but bring God, bring light to this world. Bring the light to the universe, to the world. Be a part of this and not separate yourself from the community, from God. That's the emphasis. And to combine it and help yourself in life to do that. Tanya is providing the much valuable tools. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you get some interesting insight. And you might have your own views. I talk to my friends, I talk to my good buddies, and everybody has, and we have debates, not personal, not pointing finger how wrong you are, but I see it this way, I see it that way. Sometimes a little bit critical about that way, sometimes bending a little bit the norms by saying, well, I see that community here somehow is not involved in helping people. Well, that's lashon hara. Well, you're not saying that how bad you are, but say we should do more. We all together. What can I do to contribute? We don't do enough. So when we misstate something, we're a little bit too critical about somebody else. We also have to be. We shouldn't do that. That's lashon hara. Say something that we shouldn't do. Bad punishments for that. On the other hand, if we just dissatisfied with not enough goodness going to the world, and we say, "Come on, guys, get up. Let's help each other a little bit." There's a fine line in between. And overall, you have to be bothered when you see injustice. You have to be worried that we don't do it. And nowadays, when the world is in turmoil, when the world is coming to show the world essentially, dark forces are coming all over the world to point the finger at the Jewish people and say, Jews, the way they're saying it's anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish, but really, don't kill the messenger. That basically it's a Hashem's way to point to us, to Jewish people, that guys, ladies, we have to follow the Torah. We have to follow instructions. Now, instructions can seem different to you versus you for you, but get together, discuss your differences. Don't say that I'm Sephardi, I'm going by Minhag, I have nothing to do with Ashkenazi, or vice versa, or I am Haredi and I believe in God, I have a tattoo on my hand, but I walk to the store, I still touch mezuzah. That person also have a very strong connection to God. Perhaps not the way the ultra-Orthodox person imagines that, but he is our brother, she is our sister, we all together. We have to reach to each other, get together, and bring the divine, esoteric values of God's characteristics to this earth, to this world. Unite ourselves. That's the message of today. Unite, find a common denominator, not point out that they are on the wrong way and we're on the wrong way, and I hope they'll see the light, and I hope they see the light the way I do. That's arrogant attitude. That's to say that what I know is superior, what you know, you're a sellout. that person today on this particular stage in his or her life, because that circumstances, that family upbringing, history, culture, country, that brought this person for whatever reasons in the past to this situation. Now we're here. Now we have to get together and sit with a cup of coffee, with a smile, with discussion, and say, tell me about it. How do you view the world? What do you think about this? What do you think about Tanya? What do you think about Torah? What do you think of Talmud? Do you believe the Talmud is a holy book or not? Well, you don't believe into that? You know why? Historically, you have archaeological evidence, something else. Well, let's talk about those archaeological evidence. Interesting. Some people say, I don't care for these archaeological things. I just believe, I trust in God. That's it. Some people say, I'm more analytical. I'm engineer. I'm an engineer. I'm a logical person. I like to understand exactly, have proofs and artifacts that I found, this excavation, and I saw the coin. The coin dates to such and such date. Well, you have a tendency to see this factual data, fine. Somebody else says, I don't need to see this data. I just believe in God. Some people say, I have a spiritual experience. I saw the God. I have a near-death experience, and I saw the light, and I saw the tunnel, and I saw this, and I saw God, I saw angels. Well, people can describe things in their lives in all sorts of spectrums and perspectives. In the end of the day, it's all one. And again, even the atheist, the person who doesn't believe in God, does believe in God. In reality, the God is also in him, even though the person can deny it. But you can say, I believe in goodness. I believe in helping people. I don't call it God. I just call it right thing. Do the right thing. Fine. If that's what you believe, that is also God. It's also God. Have a great day, and tomorrow we'll continue. Hopefully we'll start with lesson number 1. That was introduction, basically overview of the previous book and the beginning of the second book. So let's see what other chapter will show us. Have a great day, and God bless you, all of us.